The casserole was still warm when they walked in late, as always. Jared brushed the snow from his shoulders, gave me a distracted kiss on the cheek, and stepped over the rug I'd just vacuumed. Selena followed one hand on her belly, the other cradling her phone. She glanced around the house like it was a listing on the market. "Still have the same curtains," she said, not even trying to smile. I nodded. "They keep the draft out." Dinner was quiet, except for the sound of forks against china. I had set the table with the good plates, the ones Tom and I had picked out the year we bought the house. No one commented. Jared scrolled between bites. Selena didn't touch the pie. After the dishes were cleared, Jared leaned back and crossed his arms. "So, Selena and I have been talking. I already knew nothing good followed that sentence." He cleared his throat. "With the baby coming, we're thinking it makes sense to stay here for a while. You've got the space. We could turn the den into a nursery." Selena chimed in. "Of course we'd take care of things you wouldn't have to lift a finger." I folded my napkin slowly. "And where would I go?" Jared smiled, like he'd rehearsed this. "That's the thing. You've always said how peaceful those senior communities look. Maybe this is a good time. Or if that doesn't feel right, you could stay and help out just until we get on our feet." He didn't say it cruelly. That almost made it worse. Like this wasn't a betrayal, just a practical adjustment. Like I was a variable in an equation they'd already solved. Selena rubbed her stomach. "We just need support right now. You understand." I looked at the candle in the center of the table. Still unlit. I had meant to light it. Somehow I couldn't bring myself to. When I stood, my hands were steady. I took their plates to the sink and turned on the tap. The water ran hot. I let it scald my fingers before I spoke. "You've both made yourselves at home," I said, my voice calm. "Just don't expect me to serve." That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling Tom had painted himself. I knew what I had to do, and I already knew where I'd start in the morning. By the second morning, I no longer recognized my kitchen. The blue kettle Tom and I picked up on our anniversary trip to Duluth was gone, replaced by a brushed steel monstrosity that hissed like a machine. My handwritten recipe jar had vanished. The counter gleamed, yes, but it gleamed like a showroom, not a home. Selena stood near the stove with her phone propped against the spice rack, recording a video titled "Tiny Kitchen Upgrades." She waved at the new chrome toaster like it was a prize from a game show. "Swipe up for the link," she chirped before cutting the recording. Then she turned to me and smiled. "Your lighting's not terrible in the mornings, surprisingly." I looked down at the mug in her hand. It was Tom's. The one with the chipped handle that he insisted gave it character. She sipped from it like it meant nothing. When I reached for it gently, she said, "Oh, is this one sentimental? I was going to toss it. The chip's a little gross." "It's not," I said, quietly taking it from her hand. "I'll wash it." Later that day, I opened the hall closet and found a cardboard box on the floor. "Donate or toss it" read in black marker. Inside were my old cookbooks, the butter yellow apron I wore every holiday, and the leather-bound recipe book I'd copied by hand from my mother's notes. Tom's old flannel robe was folded on top. I carried the box into the living room where Jared sat, with his laptop on his knees, earbuds in, staring at some spreadsheet. "Is this yours?" I asked, holding the box in both hands. He looked up. "Oh, yeah. Selena's organizing. She's really good at clearing space. You've got a lot of nostalgic stuff lying around. This robe belonged to your father." Jared blinked slowly, then looked back at his screen. "Mom, it's just stuff. We're trying to make it feel fresh around here." I didn't say anything. I just walked the box back to my room and set it on the floor beside my bed. That night, I sat on the edge of the mattress and opened Tom's old robe, pressing the flannel to my face. It still smelled faintly of pine needles and coffee. I thought of the day he painted the laundry room, and came in with green flecks in his hair. A home, he'd told me, wiping sweat from his neck, is where someone sees you, even when you're quiet. I turned off the light. The next morning, I tried again. I made waffles from scratch and brought them out on the good plates. "Your dad loved these," I said, placing them on the table. Selena glanced up. "Oh." "I'm off sugar," she said, pulling out a protein bar from her purse. Jared muttered something about a call and walked away, phone already to his ear. The syrup bottle remained unopened. Later that afternoon, I put the plates back into the cabinet and started folding laundry in the guest room. My room now, really. The one with the view of the back fence and the dead garden beds. That's when I saw the photo was missing, the one of Tom and me in front of the lighthouse. I stood still for a long time, looking at the empty space on the wall, then opened the bottom drawer of the desk and reached for the notebook where I kept our old budgeting notes. I needed to check something. The air bit through my coat as I walked the 3 blocks to Maggie's diner. The sidewalks were dusted in salt and thin ice, and the bare trees reached like brittle fingers toward the gray sky. I hadn't told Jared or Selena I was leaving. I doubted they would have noticed if I had. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The warmth hit me instantly. Coffee, cinnamon toast, old linoleum, and lemon cleaner. Maggie looked up from behind the counter, her silver hair tied in a scarf, glasses sliding down her nose. "Well, look what the wind dragged in," she said, smiling. I slid into the corner booth, my booth, and wrapped my hands around the mug she brought without asking. Hot cider, always. She left me alone the way she always had when I needed space. I watched a boy outside chase his dog across a patch of leftover snow. The newspaper beside the napkin holder rustled in the heater's breeze. I reached for it mostly out of habit. That's when I saw the ad. Silverleaf Commons Winter Residency, Artist and Writers Program for Independent Seniors. Rediscover what you left behind. Below it, in smaller print, private suites. Lake access. Flexible move-in. Limited openings. I stared at the words for a long moment. Maggie returned, noticed the paper. That's the place near Lake Winona. Quiet. Clean. Wait lists usually long. Still open now, I said, my finger on the ad. I folded the page and tucked it into my purse. Back at the house, Selena was watching a home makeover show, her legs propped on the coffee table. Jared was upstairs yelling on a call. I went to the guest room and closed the door. My room. I sat at the desk and opened the bottom drawer. Tom's old ledger still smelled like cedar and old ink. His handwriting ran neat and steady through each page, careful columns and margin notes. When I reached the final balance, my breath caught. He'd left more than I ever realized. Enough. I pulled out a legal pad, wrote down the number for Silverleaf, and dialed from the rotary phone in the hall. A woman answered. Her voice was warm, unhurried. "Yes," I said. "I'd like to inquire about the artist residency. A private suite, if possible." She checked. South-facing. Fireplace. Move-in could be scheduled before Thanksgiving. I looked out the window. The yard was bare. The wind had knocked over the bird feeder again. "I'd like that," I said. She asked for my email. I gave her the one I hadn't used in years. After we hung up, I called Mr. Fennick's office and left a message. "Please schedule a meeting this week. It concerns property transfer." Then I went to the closet and stood in front of the old photo of Tom and me at the lighthouse. My hand hovered over the frame. I left it where it was. There were other things to pack first. I woke before dawn, my body alert before my eyes even opened. The house was silent, still heavy with the weight of the night. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, hands resting on my lap, letting the quiet settle in around me. The suitcase I'd packed sat by the door, small, worn enough. I had chosen only what mattered. My wool robe, a few books, the sketch pad Maggie had given me one Christmas, One photograph of Tom and me, the one where he wasn't smiling, but looking at me like I was something rare. I dressed without turning on the light. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled faintly of burnt coffee and something artificial. Selena's flavored creamer, probably. She stood at the counter eating a granola bar with one hand scrolling with the other. "We're out of prenatal vitamins," she said, not looking up. "Can you pick some up next time you go to the store?" I opened the side drawer, pulled out a single white envelope and slid it into my purse. Then I turned to her. "You'll have to manage without me." She blinked, confused. "Wait, what do you mean I didn't answer?" I didn't need to. I walked past her and started toward the stairs. Jared's voice echoed from behind the office door. "If she'd just signed the damn thing over, we could list it before winter. It's worth more than that. Don't lowball me." He didn't know yet. In my bedroom, I placed the envelope squarely on the desk, facing outward. The front read, "To be opened after my departure." Inside were 4 items: a copy of the deed legally transferred, a letter confirming termination of all shared financial accounts, my acceptance and payment receipt for the art residency at Silverleaf Commons, and one line in clean, steady handwriting: "This house was never yours to inherit. I built it with love, and I'm taking that with me." No apology, no explanation, just truth. I zipped the suitcase slow and quiet. The sound didn't echo, it absorbed into the room like a final exhale. At the front door, I looked around once more. The curtains I had sewn, the framed quilt square Tom's mother had stitched before she passed, the lamp that never quite sat straight, but still worked just fine. The details they never noticed. I stepped outside without a word. The cold met me like an old friend, familiar and bracing. The sidewalk had been salted during the night, but the wind still whispered against my coat. I reached the corner before I heard the door slam behind me. Mom Jared's voice tore across the yard. "What is this? What the hell did you do?" I didn't turn around. "Did you sign it over? Tell me you didn't sign it over." I kept walking. The echo of his voice faded behind me, replaced by the soft crunch of snow under my boots. I tightened my scarf, pressed the envelope deeper into my bag, and turned toward the station. By the time the sun had risen above the rooftops, I was already on my way to Silverleaf. The house felt colder now, though the heat was still on. The windows fogged slightly with the difference in temperature, but no one wiped them clear. Dishes sat in the sink, untouched. The blanket Selena had draped over the couch the day she arrived was bunched into a knot on the floor. Jared stood at the dining table, a manila folder in his hand, its contents slowly unraveling everything he thought he understood. "This isn't right," he muttered, flipping through the pages again. "It can't be final." She didn't say anything. Across from him, Mr. Fenwick adjusted the collar of his coat, calm and unreadable. "It's quite final, Mr. Calderon. She filed the transfer last week. It's now legally under the care of Silverleaf Foundation, with clear release from any shared claims. You were notified by proxy." Selena crossed her arms and let out a sharp breath. "So, what this place isn't even ours now?" Jared looked up, pale. She wouldn't do that." "She did," Mr. Fenwick replied, tucking the pen back into his briefcase. "And she left a clear record of intent. She simply stopped being your fallback." Selena's voice rose. "I'm not raising a baby in another woman's hand-me-down life. You said this would be ours. You said she wouldn't last another winter here anyway. I didn't think she'd—" Jared trailed off, staring at the final page, the one with my signature centered clear. He sank into a chair, dropping the folder beside him. His hands ran through his hair, then stopped to cover his face. "I thought she wanted to help." "You thought," Mr. Fenwick said quietly, without ever asking. There was no anger in the lawyer's voice, just the kind of finality that doesn't need to be raised to be felt. The front door closed behind him. Selena stood for another minute, then turned away, muttering something about being lied to. Jared stayed where he was, the light from the kitchen overhead turning his face a harsh yellow. He didn't move. The room around him didn't move. The house, once full of quiet warmth, now felt emptied out, not of furniture, but of presence. She'd been there all this time, quietly holding it together, and he had never once asked how she felt. He looked around, really looked for the first time in days. The candle at the table hadn't been lit. The clock above the mantel had stopped. And something else, too, something inside him, had shifted. He reached for his phone, opened it, then closed it again. Upstairs, Selena slammed the bathroom door. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and whispered into the stillness, I didn't know she'd actually go. But I had. And by then, I was already unpacking at Silverleaf. The corner suite faced south, just like the woman on the phone had promised. In the mornings, light stretched in long strips across the hardwood floor, settling against the walls like it had been invited. The window overlooked the lake, half frozen, now soft mist, curling off the surface in the early hours. From the little writing desk, I could see the greenhouse just beyond the path, white glass panels blinking gently in the cold. The fireplace crackled on low, and in my lap rested a fresh sketch pad. I hadn't held one in years. Not since before Tom passed. Not since the world became more about lists and less about lines. My hands felt uncertain at first, but I drew anyway. The outline of a bench, the curve of a maple tree, nothing ambitious, just shapes that meant something to me. On the second morning, I heard someone call my name in the hallway. Maggie's voice lighter than usual. I told you it'd feel like breathing again, she said, as she stepped into view, wrapped in a soft shawl that looked hand-woven. Come on. Art group meets after brunch. No excuses. I followed her down the hall and into the wide sunroom where a few residents had gathered, chatting over watercolor trays and coffee cups. No one asked what I had done before or who I had belonged to. Someone simply slid over a stool and patted the seat next to them. After brunch, I joined them. There were no formal prayers at the Thanksgiving meal. No clinking of glasses or forced confessions of gratitude. Just small plates passed with care. Warm cornbread muffins, cranberry compote in porcelain bowls, and laughter that drifted rather than demanded. I didn't speak much, but no one seemed to mind. Later that afternoon, I walked to the greenhouse. Inside, the orchids bloomed against the cold, their petals bold and strange white-violet yellow that faded at the tips. I chose a spot by the window and pulled out my sketch pad again. My pencil hesitated for a moment, then moved. The lines were uneven, the stem a little bent, but the flower bloomed there on the page all the same. Not perfect, but mine. When I finished, I looked at it for a long time, then signed the corner. Just my name, no date. No explanation. Maggie passed by on her way back from the garden bins and glanced at the page. Looks like something that belongs. I smiled, closing the sketchbook gently. I'm not escaping, I said. I arrived. And when I turned toward the door, I saw something folded on the floor beneath it, written in handwriting I hadn't seen since childhood. It was there in the morning, slipped just past the door frame, the corner curled from where it had been nudged under. No envelope, just my unit number, written in uneven blue ink. I recognized the handwriting before I unfolded it. The letter was brief. No greeting, no request. Just sentences that staggered across the page like someone unsure of how to begin. He wrote of long shifts in the warehouse, of hands that ached in the cold, of Selena leaving for her sister's place for a few days, taking the nursery plans with her. He said the silence in the house was louder now, that he'd found one of my recipes folded inside a drawer and didn't know why it made him cry. He wrote, I thought you'd always be there. I thought helping us was what you were supposed to do. Then I used to think love was currency, that if you stopped giving it meant you stopped caring. But now I see you didn't stop loving me. You just stopped letting me spend it recklessly. There was no signature. Just one final line I understand now. I stood there for a long time, holding the paper in both hands. My fingers didn't shake. Then I walked to the drawer where I kept Tom's journals and tucked the note beside them. I didn't fold it again. I didn't reread it. I just let it rest in the quiet where it couldn't ask for anything more than I'd already given. The studio was warm from the afternoon light. I opened the small drawer beneath the windowsill and pulled out a candle lavender and sage, the one I'd been saving. I placed it on the table without ceremony. No folded napkins, no centerpiece. No need to explain. I lit it slowly, watching the wick catch, then settle into a steady flame. It wasn't for guests, not for a holiday, not for remembrance, just because I wanted to. The scent filled the room in soft waves, wrapping itself around the pages of my sketchbook. The faint music from down the hall, the space I now called mine. I sat beside it, palms open on the table, breathing in the stillness. No one was waiting for me to serve. No one was watching to see if I'd flinch. And in that small circle of light, I smiled, not in triumph, but in peace, because I had not disappeared. I had not been erased. I had simply walked out of the frame they built for me and into the life I had quietly made for myself. The candle flickered, once then steadied. And somewhere just outside the window, a branch tapped softly against the glass as if to agree.